Um, so we will actually be recording the session since you just heard the recording in progress. The recording will be made available within 2 to 3 business days on our YouTube channel. We'd ask you to hold your questions until the end, until the presentation is over, but you can add them to the Q&A box and we'll just queue them up and come back to them later. So the purpose of the SURE program is to develop and sustain research excellence of faculty at institutions that award degrees that receive limited NIH support and serve students from groups that are underrepresented in the biomedical research field. So the program is meant to provide research support for the faculty in the form of R16 grants and to provide students at these smaller schools with research opportunities that they may not otherwise have access to. And the other thing is for sustainability. So one of the key goals of the program is to catalyze research at institutions to enrich that research environment in a sustainable way so that going forward in the future, there'll be even more opportunities to build out from at that institution. So there are two R16 funding mechanisms. There is the regular R16, which is SURE stands for Support for Research Excellence Award, if I didn't say that, sorry. And that's 100,000 per year for up to 4 years, and is a renewable research grant. So you can put that in with your research progress report, and if you've been productive, you can actually renew it and continue a research program that's driven primarily by undergraduates, which is quite an interesting and exciting thing. The second program is the SURE First program, and this is meant for people that do not have a track record of research awards or research funding. This is a little bit bigger. It's 125,000 per year for up to 4 years. It's mentored and non-renewable. So an individual that received one of these could not actually apply for renewal, but they could then apply for a regular R16 grant after this. And the other key difference between the two that we're not going to talk about too much is that the SURE First does require a significant amount of effort in terms of faculty effort. So that's an obstacle to some individuals. So one of the things that we're very concerned with is institutional eligibility, and we'll come back to this a little bit later in the presentation. So the first criteria is that the institution has to award a bachelor's degree or equivalent in biomedical sciences and enroll greater than or equal to 25% of their undergraduate students be supported by Pell Grants. So they can also qualify as if they're a medical and health professional school that has a history or was initially founded to educate students from underrepresented groups, even if they are not meeting the criteria. We'll come back to how to check the Pell Grant criteria later on in the presentation. The second criteria is the institutions have to have a limited amount of NIH funding. So it has to have less than $6 million in total costs in NIH research project grant funding in each of the past 2 years. And that can be calculated using NIH Reporter. And the third criteria, which I don't think anyone has hit yet, but this will probably happen in the future, there can be no more than 20 active SURE awards at the institution. This also includes score grants, SC1, SC3, which have been phased out. So there may be a few of them still active, but I think these should disappear in the near future. There are no limit to SURE First grant awards, however. So this is our SURE Resource Center team. You'll see me right in the middle on the left there. I'm the co-director with Dr. Spear, who's on the bottom. We have a lot of individuals that work in a lot of different biomedical related areas, including statistics, physiology, biochemistry, and so on. We have a lot of people that work in sponsored projects and in things like the Office of Research Integrity. So there's a lot of expertise in our group to help individuals with different aspects of grant preparation and also different aspects of administrative infrastructure and how to build that infrastructure out and create a sustainable research environment at a smaller institution. So we kind of have 4 key pillars here of what we do as a center. We have virtual training opportunities for faculty, staff, and trainees, and we have lots of these. These go on 1 or 2 times a month. And they cover a lot of different topics and different aspects of form preparation, different aspects of grantsmanship. And we've recently added several trainee-focused aspects to these webinars. So these are things, for example, of what are strategies that trainees could use for interviewing for jobs, or how they could find a good post-bac program, which is one of the seminars that we have coming up. We also have a biannual conference where we invite past Sea Grant awardees, as well as trainees and other administrative staff from eligible institutions to come and share their science and talk to NIH staff and to network with other R16 recipients and others that you kind of get a feel for what best practices are. We also provide consultation and mentoring that provide personalized support to R16 applicants. So we do this through our regional coordinators on our website. And what we're going to be talking about here today is the Sea Grant program, this last thing down in the bottom right here. So the Sea Grant program is a key aspect of this center where we're trying to build out research infrastructure of smaller institutions by providing seed grant money that might help small offices that might be only one or two individuals, or might require various other aspects of support to kind of shore up their infrastructure in a way that might actually help them to leverage that better administrative infrastructure into more success for the faculty receiving grants in the future. So on an annual basis, we typically have in the vicinity of 250,000 total for this program that we award via a competitive application process. This is up to 50,000 in direct costs per award, and there are no F&A charges with this, so there's no indirect charges. It's 50,000 indirect. One of the things that we have to remind you of repeatedly on this, because it comes up a lot, is that this is not intended to support gathering of data for research proposals. So when people think about pilot awards or these small grants, they're thinking about in terms of, oh, I could use this to develop preliminary data for a grant submission in the future. That's not what this is. These are administrative awards that are meant to help a smaller office at an institution build out so that they can provide better administrative support for faculty that are working on grants. So better support both in the pre-award and the post-award stage, improve software tools, hire individuals and things along those lines, not for someone to do a research project. So over the first couple of years of the program, we've awarded almost $1 million in over 21 institutions across the country. So you can see the geographic distribution below. We've been pretty good at spreading these out across the country to different institutions. Other SURE eligible institutions are welcome to apply for funding. One thing we will come back to again, if your institution has received one before, they're no longer eligible. But you can apply if you're anywhere in any of these eligible institutions at any other states, even if other institutions in your state have received one. As long as your institution has not received a seed grant in the past, you're eligible. So the goal of the seed grant program is to establish or strengthen your Office of Sponsored Projects, or equivalent, whatever your institution calls this office, at a SURE eligible institution. So we want to use this program to help to increase the number of faculty at institutions that are eligible for the SURE program, and also enhance the geographic distribution of institutions that participate in that SURE R16 program. And as a side effect of this would increase the number of students, particularly those from underrepresented groups, who are actively engaged in research. So again, these awards can provide up to 50,000 in direct costs and no indirect costs for 1 year. Competitive applicants are going to demonstrate a readiness to complete a proposed project in a single year. That's important. And we do 4 to 6 of these per year. And it does vary. Sometimes there's more. It really depends on the NIH budget. Now, your institution would have to have an applicant lead on this. This would be the person who would be responsible for administration of the Sea Grant Award. So this is the person who oversees the expenditure of the money and reports back to us the progress and how it's being spent. They're going to work closely with us, and especially Melissa. And they will also be required to attend our quarterly meetings via Zoom and attend our biannual SURE conference, where we cover the travel costs. So that is not a cost that you need to write into the proposal itself. So there are several required attachments, and we'll show you how to get to these in a minute. The first one is the current OSP and institutional environment. So what you'd have to do is describe your current Office of Sponsor Projects, including staffing and budget, or a proposed model to create one if you don't have an Office of Sponsor Projects or equivalent, and indicate the current level of sponsor projects activity at your institution. So how many grant applications do you have being submitted? How many do you have awarded, and that sort of thing. So describe your perception of the current shortcomings of your ISP operations. And this whole thing is only 500 words or less, so it can be quite short. So the main goal here is you're going to identify the main environment at your institution. And importantly, you want to say the shortcoming of what it is that you're trying to fix with the seed grant award. So you're identifying a problem here. Then you're going to also describe the scholarly environment and the institution's goal for establishing and enhancing sponsor project support. This includes activities that would be conducted to build and strengthen your Office of Sponsor Projects during this one-year period of the grant award. So, and then you want to outline not only the immediate expected impacts associated with project activities, but how this is going to be sustainable going forward. So you're identifying a problem and proposing a solution and how you're going to do this. Now, you also need to provide a letter from an institutional official. So this is a dean, a provost, a vice president for research, or someone similar that is responsible for the oversight of sponsor projects at your institution, or basically the responsible institutional official. And this letter needs to demonstrate their support for this seed grant program. So the letter has to also describe how the OSP responsibilities are going to be sustained after the grant period ends. And one of the things that we've seen with these in the past, we're really looking for in this letter evidence that your institution is serious about sustaining research infrastructure at the institution. So some specifics about how they're going to do this going forward. Now, I can give you just as one example, a very simple one off the top of my head for this, is if part of your seed grant award is proposing, say, hiring an individual at half full-time equivalent, and some of the funds are going to go to support that individual to help build out your Office of Sponsor Projects. Your institutional letter of support would then have to go on to describe how that individual is going to be supported going forward, because the grant is only for a year. So how is the institution going to make a commitment to making that a full-time position in the future, or something along those lines? What we're looking for is some specifics here. And then a short grant budget and justification. This can usually be very simple. These are not large, complicated projects, so there may only be one or two line items that have to be described in there. So you have to say what it is that you're spending the money on and how much it's going to cost. So allowable costs include research development, software, travel to meetings for research administration trainings, meetings, for example, such as Ancura, society membership fees, consultant costs to enhance research administrative infrastructure, costs for personnel, and things along those lines. Things that are not allowable is, again, direct grants to faculty for scientific projects to collect preliminary data. That's not what these are about. Or other faculty incentives like buying out their instructional time, applicant lead support, meals, office supplies, or indirect costs. And if you're in doubt about any of these, you can ask us if you think it may be kind of on the borderline. We'll be happy to answer those questions for you. So how we evaluate these, again, these are quite short. They're usually only a few pages long. We're looking for evidence of how those funds are going to enhance the Office of Sponsor Projects. So is the problem that you've identified in that short letter going to actually be addressed by what you have proposed to spend the money on? We also want to look at again, the strategy that your institutional official has indicated in their letter of sustainability and how this is going to make a difference long-term in building out research infrastructure at your institution. So we're looking for an institutional commitment to research here that could extend beyond the one-year lifespan of this pilot grant. And we're also looking for a geographical distribution to ensure regional distribution of the pilot awards. So again, we showed you the map earlier on, but we're trying to make sure that the money is fairly distributed nationally. So we've put together a few funding ideas of different things you could propose. This is not an exhaustive list. There are many, many ideas that people have had over the past couple of years. We've been impressed with the creativity of different institutions and what they've come up with. on ways that they could improve their infrastructure. The most important thing is to identify what you think could be helped or fixed at your institution and how you're going to do this. So things like technological investments, including software for grant processing, centralization or transitioning from pre to post award, tracking faculty effort is a big deal, or tracking progress, right? So how you could look, summarize or collect the data on number of presentations, publications, service on review panels, grants submitted, and so on. Engagement of research administrators and support staff in different administrative societies, such as Incura that I mentioned already. This is not only a networking opportunity, but also contains various training opportunities, things to support membership fees and attendance at different meetings that would also involve staff training, or things like hiring a management consultant that might help to come up with an organizational plan for your institution. So continuing professional development activities for staff, better integration of research support functions, evaluating current operations and how to improve them. One thing I will say about this, since this comes up a lot, is for consulting in particular, if this is actually quite a good use of the funding, but this also raises the issue of when you have that institutional letter of support, you should be sure that that letter of support addresses how, for example, if you've had a managing consultant come in to help to design or improve your office of sponsored projects, how your institution would support that going forward. So if you have someone who's going to suggest a plan for how you can change things, where's the funding going to come from to implement that plan in the future? And also, of course, hiring staff is one of the common things we see people propose spending the funding on. So our application timeline. So the applications are due on February 28th at 11:59 p.m. Eastern. We'll come to our portal in a minute. We're going to review these in mid-April. We'll discuss the top scored applications and make funding recommendations. Then we will actually put the funding recommendations before our Resource Center Steering Committee at NIH. And we'll actually have a bunch of people on here. So this is individuals across the country that are consult on the functioning administration of a resource center that will weigh in on this and approve or disapprove with funding. Then in early June, this is my eyes getting sore. It's dry. Hopefully everyone did well with the storm for those of you that were in the storm path. So we intend to notify applications of funding decisions in June, and the seed grant awards are going to start in early September. And this is being driven largely by our grant funding cycle year. So our new grant year starts at the beginning of September. So this makes it work well in terms of the administration side. So the post-award expectations for the 5 years after the award, you'll be required to attend quarterly Zoom-based meetings with the SURE leadership for the award period. And this is just a networking opportunity for, because we have a good sized group now, to hear how people are doing at other institutions, challenges they've faced, how they've overcome them, and so on. So this is a good chance for people to meet their counterparts at different small institutions and to hear how they've been dealing with challenges, and to meet new contacts and network, and hopefully you can meet some of them in person at one time or another. You will also be required to report the number and type of NIH grants that are submitted, reviewed, scored, or funded, and on non-NIH grants that are submitted or funded over that period. This is just to help us track how the program is doing. And also report the number of faculty who have submitted grants and abstracts submitted to national meetings and publications resulting from NIH funding. And finally, to participate in one future SURE biannual research conference, which the last one we held at NIH campus in Bethesda last summer, and it was very successful. We had quite a large number of people. It was really good and fun. And we'll have our other one coming up in another couple of years. So it's still a little bit of ways in the future. And again, we cover the travel costs for that. So it's not something you have to worry about budgeting. And now I'm going to switch over to Melissa here, and she's going to tell you a little bit about the applicant resources and the submission portal.
Great. If you would go to the next slide. Yeah, so hopefully everyone who is interested in applying for these funds has now had a chance to review the application guidelines PDF. That document is available for download on the Sure Resource Center website. If by chance you have not seen this, the QR code can take you directly there. But this really outlines a lot of the information that Dr. Murphy covered in the presentation this morning. Discusses the purpose of the grant, the types of costs that are allowable or not, how we'll evaluate applications, and the general timeline for funding. So certainly review this document, and if you have questions, you're welcome to follow up with either the regional coordinator that serves your part of the country or center leadership via email. Next slide. Now, I know this is quite small, but this is the OSP seed grant application portal itself. And so I really took a screenshot just to show you how simple we have kept the application. So we have made our best effort to ensure that it's not very onerous. So those of you who are working in small offices that are probably working with very little staff should feel that it's something that you can complete by the deadline. What you'll see is a little information about your applicant lead. So you're going to tell us who that person is, provide their contact information and their role on campus, as well as a little bit about staffing in your office currently. And those pieces of information are not evaluated in a very strenuous way. We just want to get a sense of your operations and who we would be working with. As mentioned before, it's really the 3 attachments that are going to drive the score of your application and be the focus of the review process. Again, if you have not navigated to the portal, the QR code that's on the screen to the left will take you there. It's also linked on our center website. Once you have completed these pieces of information, you'll see a blue Submit Application button, and then you're done with the application. You should see a message on your screen that indicates that you were successful in submitting. And at that point, it's just a matter of waiting for review and funding decisions. Okay, next slide. A couple of databases are going to be important for you if you're not sure if your institution is currently Sure R16 eligible. And that's because eligibility for the OSP Seed Grant program directly aligns with eligibility for the Sure R16 program. The first of which was mentioned, the IPEDS database. This is where you're going to determine the number of undergraduate students as a percentage of either the total undergraduate population or just your full-time, first-time degree-seeking student population. And as mentioned, you want to make sure that that number is at least at 25%. So 25 or more will help you meet that criteria. This database is really full of a lot of different pieces of information. So if you do have trouble navigating it, certainly feel free to reach out to our team. Either myself or a regional coordinator will be happy to help you determine your final Pell Grant percentage as it applies to your eligibility. And then on the side of research project grant funding through NIH, you must use the NIH Reporter database linked here on the right. You'll do an advanced search and you're looking for the 2 most recent fiscal years, funding through NIH, and non-SBI STTR research project grant funding. Same thing, if you have any trouble navigating the search correctly, certainly feel free to reach out to our team. But you do need to show that you meet R16 eligibility in order to submit a seed grant. Okay, next slide. So I've referenced our regional coordinator several times now. These folks are senior key members of our team who have a lot of expertise, not only in the SURE program, but conducting federally funded research in general. So either of them or myself are excellent resources if you want to check your eligibility, if you'd like to ask questions about the application, that sort of thing. I've also included a screenshot of my weekly office hours. So most Fridays from 3 to 4 p.m. Eastern, I'm online on Zoom. So you can pop in and ask questions that way. If you want to avoid a lot of email back and forth, that's often a good option. You can certainly request a meeting with your regional coordinator if that time doesn't work for you. And then I put our shared inbox email address there, so that'll get you to center leadership, and we can answer questions that way as well. So hopefully one of the options will be a good fit for you to get questions answered before you complete your application. Next slide. And then I do want to mention, if you have an office that's quite small, or maybe you're looking to establish a new office in general, we do have some pre-recorded webinars that might be useful to you. So if you navigate to the Sure Resource Center YouTube channel, you'll be able to see lots of different trainings, but we do have these categorized by type. So if you navigate to the Office of Sponsored Projects section, you'll see previous webinars that are really specific for that attendee segment. And there are two that I would like to draw your attention to. So we have a session titled Organizing an Office of Sponsored Programs for Success. Those of you that may be looking to establish a new office or really retool what you have in place, this presenter describes models that are commonly used and can be very helpful as you are thinking about ways to enhance your operations or to build an initial office. The second session is titled Data Informed Decision Making in Research Administration. And again, I think this is one that can be particularly important. Certainly lots of other sessions that you can consider looking at if you have a particular avenue that you're already interested in enhancing and want to see what kind of advice we have offered on that front. Okay, next slide. So with that, I think our team can take any sort of questions. We have a good 30 minutes scheduled, and we'll be happy to answer as many as we can. All right, well, I'll start with the Q&A box, and then we'll pop over to the chat afterwards. The first question says, did I hear correctly that if you have received an OSPC grant in the past, you are no longer eligible to apply for this mechanism? And the answer to that is, at this time, yes. We had a lengthy discussion with our steering committee, and for now, they want to see awards made to as many different institutions as possible. If at any point that changes and the decision is to open the application back up to those who've received an award in the past, we'll certainly share that information. But for now, if you have been fortunate in receiving an award during one of the early cycles, you are not eligible to apply this time.
But if I could just add, if you applied and did not receive a seed grant, you're more than welcome to apply once again.
Yeah, certainly encourage those of you who did apply but were not successful to use the comments you received to improve an application this go around. The next question says, my institution will be applying and looking to request funds to purchase a grant management system. Are there specific systems previous awardees have enjoyed? I don't personally know the answer to that. There have been some systems that have been purchased. So Cayuse and InfoReady come to mind, but I don't have any feedback on user experience at this stage. Do either of you?
No, I think it's going to take a little time to get that information. From when we have our quarterly meetings, we talk to people, but from what my experience, we haven't got that information yet.
I mean, we have our own personal experience with working with Cayuse and stuff, but again, when you're proposing things like that, since it's generally these are licensed products, one of the things you would have to include in the letter of institutional support is that this would be supported going forward after the initial expenditure. Right? I mean, I know there's a big upfront cost for this, but then there's going to be annual costs that are associated with it.
Yep.
I think we had someone propose developing their own system at one point.
Yeah, we definitely have folks discuss that. I'm not sure. I feel like that would be a heavy lift, I guess,
Yeah,
although
I think the problem with that is in such a short application, it's awfully hard for you to make a convincing case that this would be something that your institution could do, unless you had like some really compelling evidence. I mean, it's hard with such a small amount of space.
yeah. Okay, the next question is asking, can a faculty member be the administrative person, so the applicant lead, if they could use free summer months to execute the project? Yeah, so we don't have any objection to a faculty member serving as applicant lead. And some institutions have a policy where they like faculty rather than staff to be PI on awards. So as long as you have a good relationship and a connection with research leadership at your institution and your sponsor projects office, and the free time to execute the project, that's perfectly fine by us. Next question is asking, are the funds to only be used to increase participation in the SURE program, or can it be for increasing research in general?
But it's more, this is a general program. I mean, the goal is to increase success of R16 applications, but it's also, it's building out general research infrastructure at the institution. Because one of the things we'd like to see, are there other grants you're applying for? Foundation grants, NSF grants, things along those lines. So it's not just R16s. I mean, individuals may apply for other grants. Well, R1s would be great, R15s if your institution's eligible for those. So yeah, it's not just R16s. This is just research infrastructure in general.
But I would also add, I think NIH maybe, biomedical NIH centric is probably would receive higher priority than someone that's looking to enhance, grants from NSF or Department of Defense or other things. So I would try to keep at least NIH at the forefront of your objectives, but it's definitely not R16 specific.
Okay. The next question would like to know if there's a way to find what other institutions have been funded through the program, and or if it's possible to see what sort of ideas or best practices that they are using to enhance their operations. So I will say we have not published that information yet. We're working with our first group of awardees and trying to let them complete their projects at this stage. Typically, we don't take any action without putting it in front of our steering committee first. So we would certainly want to make sure that we have their approval before we publish any specific details. We did show you the distribution of the awardees to hopefully give you confidence that we are making a good faith effort to see these awards go to many different parts of the country, including U.S. territories that have eligible institutions. And I guess the other follow-up I would say is that many of the institutions that have been funded are doing projects where the costs are similar to what has been shown. So they are seeking consultation, they are training staff members, they're doing hiring. Any other comments to add?
No, I think.
Yeah, no, we can't. I mean, there's also issues of confidentiality that be we can't just share other people's applications. I mean, if you're aware of a colleague at another institution that received one, you can ask them. I mean, that's fine, but we can't provide the information for you other than a general sense of what people have done in the past at a general level.
I will say that we have had some people have asked us, what is the best use of these funds, or what are your priorities, and we've really tried to keep it very open-ended. You know your institution better than we do. You know what your needs are, so we've tried not to limit or prioritize sort of areas. We want to see what you think is best for your institution, and again, not try to be biased in any way.
Right. I mean, the key is again identifying in your attachment what the problem is you're trying to fix, how you're going to fix it, and how you're going to sustain this improvement going forward. And that's going to be very institution specific. Maybe for your institution, the only thing is you just don't have good software for managing grant proposals and things like that. If that's true, you can just make the case for that. tell us what you're going to do about it, and show us how you're going to keep that going forward.
Okay. The next guest has a 4-part question, so I'll do them one at a time. If our institution in the distant past has had faculty who've had R15 grants, and we now have faculty who are eligible for R16s, would our institution be eligible to apply for seed grants? So yes, if your institution is eligible for the R16 grant program, then you are likewise eligible for our seed grant program. Second part, who can we reach out to ensure our eligibility? Again, either myself or the regional coordinator that covers your part of the country would be happy to do this sort of check for you. Typically, we send links to show you where we pulled the data from iPads or Reporter, so you can look at that yourself. Third question, is there a template for budget, or do we use the NIH template? I will say we have intentionally kept this open. We have tried to remove the burden from applicants by being very strict in the presentation of the information. So as long as you stay within the word count on the narrative and include allowable budgets, there's no requirement that it be an NIH formatted template or anything like that.
I mean, even if it's a lot of these things are going to have very simple budgets, so even just a text description of how the money is spent is fine.
Yep, agreed. And then question number 4, would we get reviewer feedback even if the proposal is not funded? And so the answer to that is yes. So I don't serve as a reviewer, but I take the notes that they pass down and sort of collate them into some concise bullets. So you can see where reviewers felt that there were weaknesses or concerns that could be addressed for a resubmission application. So we send those out via email after the applicants that have been selected for awards receive notification. All right, next question says, we've lost a lot of staff over the last year to remote positions. We are currently looking to restructure and restaff our office. Will significant turnover hurt our chances of being funded? No, we face that at our institution as well.
It's common.
Yeah, I think everyone who works in research administration and the faculty supported by those folks know this is just a problem in the profession.
Right. And funding new staff through training opportunities is a rather common budget request, so that's not unusual.
Okay. Next question, is a list of previous awardees available so we could check whether other institutions in our geographic area have been awarded? Also, if others have been awarded that are close by, how much might that negatively impact our application?
Well, as we said, we can't provide any of the other information. I would say that geographical distribution, even though that's one criteria, it will not negatively impact applications. We actually had a long conversation with our steering committee about this. If a state already has a seed grant, should that impact other applications from that state? And we, as well as our steering committee, felt very strongly that should not negatively impact any application. And we have awarded several seed grants to institutions in the same state. So that should not be a major concern.
Okay, great. Next question, when does the SURE Biennial Conference usually take place? So for those who are awarded, there is an expectation that you'll attend one conference in person and participate as a panelist to talk about the project that you oversaw and how it has impacted operations at your institution. As Dr. Murphy mentioned, we had the first conference in July of 2024 and are looking at summer of 2027 as the most likely next date. We are waiting for NIH to give us the final timeline, but what we're hearing is that's most likely. Okay, next question. What would be the best strategy to encourage faculty to apply for R16 awards?
Well, we could spend many hours addressing that question. It is a great question. you know, we have a lot of webinars that are very focused or targeted to faculty. I would encourage you to, ask your faculty to look at these webinars. We talk about a lot of different aspects of NIH funding. So that's one thing to think about. Another thing is that NIH is very interested in the success of this program. So the success rate for R16 grants is actually very encouraging. Last year, I believe it was close to 50%. And so those are very strong success rates from NIH. So you might want to tell your faculty about that. That might be an incentive. Paul, anything else from your side?
Yeah, I would say also that one of the things that's important is that encouraging faculty to submit grant applications is to some extent a function of the infrastructure at the institution. So it's something that should probably be at least touched on in the letter that comes from the institutional official. This is that, we are interested in encouraging faculty to submit applications for research grants in the future, and maybe like briefly outline how they would help faculty get, understand how to submit grants and maybe get some additional training. I mean, we have our own webinars, but a lot of institutions have their own internal support mechanisms that help people build up their grantsmanship skills and things like that. I think the key is looking for why is there a culture of that's permissible, that's permissible, that is what's the word I'm looking for here? Is there an encouraging structure present at the institution that would actually be there for someone who's interested in doing research? Because not all institutions are interested in doing research. So, I mean, you want to have some evidence that that is true at your institution.
Right. Yeah. I will say also, we understand that there's a challenge for primary, undergraduate institutions that are primarily focused on undergraduate teaching. We're working on a webinar that we hope to have in the next couple of months where we're going to have some faculty from PUIs that are actually going to talk about some of the challenges of doing research and how to maybe deal with some of those challenges. So hopefully we'll get that up in either February or March. So that might be some useful information for faculty who are thinking about research.
Okay. Next question is asking if funds can be used for faculty stipends to participate or to facilitate a faculty learning community focused on research or grant writing. So not necessarily for specific research projects, but more in a capacity building.
I don't think that would be reviewed highly at our review panel. I think we really are looking more for the OSP, that side of things is what I would say.
Okay. Next, this person would like to confirm that the application and budget could include use of funds to support a staff member in the 1 year of the grant with specificity on how we would sustain that position moving forward. Yep,
that's doable.
Yep, and a common request. Next question, if our institution receives Embry funding, does that negatively impact our Sea Grant application?
No. Nope, not at all.
Next, can you please expound on eligibility with respect to institutions with less than $6 million in NIH research funding? Is it for institutions with less than $6 million currently or over a particular time period? So the NIH, or total federal government fiscal year, runs from October 1 to September 30th annually. So what you're going to need to look at is your institution's research project grant funding that is non-SBIR STTR in fiscal years 23 and 24. And in each of those years, you need to be below the $6 million threshold. Again, if you're unsure on how to input that information into a report or advanced search, we'd be happy to do that for you. Next question, there is no mention of a bio sketch for the lead PI. Would this be part of the justification? Nope, we have not asked for this information in the past. I wouldn't encourage you to include that per se. I would also guess that the average research administrator probably doesn't have an NIH bio sketch prepared, so no need to do extra work.
Yeah, we've been trying to keep the application process simple, and be respectful of everyone's time. We don't want to be burdensome.
Yeah, as I mentioned before, when I showed a screenshot of the application, we're collecting information about who the applicant lead is to understand who we would be working with, but we're not evaluating that person in a substantial way. Next question, would a mention of planning applications for other infrastructure NOFOs like the BRESPAD program be a negative in the institutional letter of support?
I would almost look at it as maybe a positive. It means that you are looking forward, and something like BRESPAD, which is certainly a new program, would demonstrate that you are looking down the road of ways to continue and strengthen your OSP.
Yep, agreed. Next question is asking, would this be available for a university that wants to start applying for grants more frequently, but is really just starting the process?
Not a problem.
Yep.
And a number of the institutions that we've reviewed already, and in some cases have funded, are for institutions that are really just starting the process. So that would not be a negative.
Okay. Next question, is there any other deadlines? Oh, sorry, it scrolled. When I look at the NIH website at PAR 24-144, the standard SURE R16, there are different deadlines on the website. Are these a different process of application? Yeah, so while eligibility for our OSPC grant program is directly tied to SURE R16 eligibility, the administration of the R16 grant program runs directly through NIH, whereas the OSPC grant program has a middle step through the SURE Resource Center and our steering committee. So that's why you'll see different deadlines for the two programs. Next question says, do you have any suggestions as to how we can talk about the outcomes of this grant? So if I'm reading this correctly, I assume you mean for what you're proposing to work on. And I think that's really going to vary by what the goal of your proposed project is going to be. So if you are looking to implement a new grants management software, then maybe you have a timeline for purchase, training, and implementation by the end of the project year, versus if you are looking to train staff through Incura or SRAI. But these are short projects, so hopefully this element of the application should not be too burdensome.
If you're asking about in the future how you would talk about it, as that kind of like if you were successful and then had to come to a biannual conference and discuss it. I mean, one of the things we're really interested in is how well this worked, or what sort of challenges were there, right? I mean, did you get like faculty pushback? Like how people always get really when you have new software stuff, right? So I mean, what sort of challenges did you have? How did you overcome them? That sort of thing.
I think that's all the questions. If there are any others, we've got about 10 minutes or so. We'd be happy to take those. And if not, we thank you for joining us this morning. Again, absolutely feel welcome to utilize our team as a resource to answer new questions that crop up between now and February 28th. We'll do the best we can to answer those for you so that you can submit an application that you are confident about.
All right.
All right. Thanks all.
Thank you all.